Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. When my mother-in-law Preta was in her 20s, she was teaching at Sunday school. Like most Sunday schools, the kids were there to learn about the stories in the Bible. However, my mother-in-law decided to teach the girls how to sew tiny little dresses for their dolls. Within weeks of her starting up, all the little girls wanted to be part of my mother-in-law's class. Ironically, this made the other Sunday school teachers jealous. They complained to the higher authorities, and Preta was called in to explain herself. "We've heard you've not been teaching them about the Bible. Instead, you've only been involving them in play," said the person in charge. "You can come in, you can test the knowledge of the kids," retorted my mother-in-law. "And you will find that they are well versed in the Bible. They know their stories, they are doing what they should be doing in Sunday school." You can clearly see the wisdom of play in this story, can't you? You can also see how people in charge resist it a lot, even though it's apparent that we all have this streak of playfulness. And this playfulness we can't seem to shake. When we're learning something, we want the trainer to bring a sense of joy into our learning. Instead, most education is soulless. It's incredibly dull. So why are we so surprised when clients drop out? We know that we're guilty of this. We're guilty of this callous training and teaching system. But what if we were to change things around? What if we were to make fun the core of our system? What if we postponed designing the information section and thought of the fun elements instead? What if we started with fun? What if fun wasn't an afterthought, but part of the entire structure of learning? So if you're creating a workshop or a course or a video series or a presentation or a webinar, this is your chance. Infotainment. And this is what we'll cover today. We'll look at 3 parts. The first is how to create infotainment. The second is how to understand the goal of infotainment. And finally, how to place those fun elements in your training. Let's start out with the first part, which is how to create infotainment. Let's say you were in charge of getting a kid to write. Would you start with slimy, oozy eyeballs? Here's the story of Jen Jackson from Seattle. Jen started a small English tutoring business. It was aimed at kids that were being homeschooled. One of her students was Michael. Michael had no problem with reading. He could read really well, but he despised writing. His mother tried everything, but her methods weren't working, and so she called Jen to help Michael write. Let's say you're the teacher. What would you do? What would the first session look like? What would the second session look like? What would the third session look like? Well, this is Jen's story. Let her tell it herself.
Well, Michael's mother came to me and she was saying, my little boy loves to read but will not write. And obviously he has to write a lot for school. I've tried everything. I've tried to punish him, rewards, bribes, everything, and nothing is working. Do you think that you could meet with him and see if there's anything that you could do to help? And I said, yes, I would love to meet him. So I met with Michael, and he was a charming little boy, really sharp and very, very funny. I had a different approach than a lot of people do. And at first I wanted to get him on my side and want to work with me. So for our first 2 sessions, we didn't even try to write. So the first session, We laughed, we played word games, we told jokes back and forth, and I left him laughing and he didn't want me to go. That was wonderful. So then the next week I came back and we still didn't go ahead and start writing at all. We read more books, we were laughing, and Michael drew this great picture of a monster. And so I came up with the idea of let's make a menu for the Monster Cafe, because he loves monsters, he loves gross things like most little boys do, and he just really latched onto this idea. So I still didn't have him write all this himself. We took turns on this one piece of paper, and we both added menu items for this Monster Cafe. And the more disgusting it was, the better. And he just thought it was hysterical that an adult would talk about slimy, oozy eyeballs. Eventually, he worked up to writing several Monster Cafe menus for various different types of monsters. And eventually, as we kept on playing around with this, he was able to write a paragraph, and now is going into 4th grade. He doesn't have the same kind of fears or resistance to writing that he did when we started.
When we listen to the story, we can see how entertainment has led to information success, can't we? Yet, as an educator, it somehow feels scary. Even if you embrace the power of entertainment, you embrace it as the doorway to learning. How are you supposed to implement it? If you did what Jen did, wouldn't Michael's parents look at you funnily, wondering if you're just wasting their time and their money? What are you supposed to do when you're not dealing with kids? What are you supposed to do when you're dealing with adults instead? And can you really do this in a field like marketing or finance? The core of entertainment is to take the pressure off. To take that pressure off completely. Let's say you wanted to learn Photoshop and you've never looked at Photoshop before. That sounds a bit intimidating, doesn't it? So how do you make it fun? You look at what causes people to freeze. Incredibly, it's the computer and Photoshop itself. So when I'm showing clients how to use Photoshop for the first time, I usually take them to a cafe. I take them to the cafe without the computer. We sit down, we have some coffee, we talk. Then we work our way through some core shortcuts. And you know what? You don't have to imagine this scenario. You can play along. Let's say you wanted to draw something in Photoshop. What would you do? Well, first you need the brush tool, right? So which letter on your keyboard would you press? If you think of the letter B, well, that's the right letter. But what if you wanted to change the opacity of the brush to 30%? What number would you press? Think of it for a second. Would it be 5 or 7 or 9? You want the opacity to be 30%. So the number would be 3. That's the right answer. 50%? 5. 70%? Of course, I'm teasing. You know the answer. So now you know about the brush, which is B. You know that if you want to get a 50% opacity for that brush, you press 5. If it's 90%, 9. And of course, 100% is 0. But wait, what if you wanted to increase the size of the brush? Because when you're drawing something in Photoshop, you have to increase and decrease the size. So let's say the square brackets, that's what you need to increase and decrease the size. And if you look down on your keyboard, you'll see square brackets. So would you press the left square bracket to increase or decrease it? Most people make the right choice. They go left square bracket, that's decrease, right square bracket, that's increase. You're having a coffee. There is no computer in sight. You're told to create a theoretical drawing in Photoshop. You have to get to the brush. You have to get to opacity at 90%. Then you have to reduce the brush size. Notice how much fun the whole exercise turned out to be. The first way is to take the pressure off. To take that pressure off the person or the group and to get them into that safe zone. To take them away from the activity that you're trying to teach them. So if you put that student or client in a different setting, The pressure is instantly off. There is a sense of play, and now they're ready to learn. However, not everyone can waltz their way into a cafe or garden. Some teaching needs to be done at the venue itself. What do you do then? One of the best and most effective ways to get the pressure off is to get the clients to do something wrong. Let's take an example. At Psychotactics, we have conducted many workshops over the years on topics such as pricing, on writing articles, on info products. But this one was particularly difficult. It was the uniqueness workshop. The fact that we were going to take 3 days to get to uniqueness didn't help. How do you take the pressure off? Here's what you do. You get the uniqueness wrong. That's what you do. Instead of trying to get the clients to get everything right, which is, as you can tell, a lot of pressure, we decided to get them to get the exercise completely wrong. So I gave each client an advertisement for a local business. They all had the same ad, and they had to figure out the uniqueness of the company in under 10 minutes. However, before they started, I informed them that all of them, no matter how hard they tried, would get the assignment wrong. Now imagine you're in the room right at this very moment. You can hear the hush, can't you? You have an assignment, but you're not going to get it right. You're going to get it wrong. First, there's a bit of confusion on everyone's face. And then everyone breaks out into a big smile. They take on the assignment and they know, okay, I'm not going to get this right, so they just dig into it. They start to have fun. The pressure to get it all right is gone, and now they can have a jolly good time. They start the assignment, complete their version of it, and they're all chattering away. They're having this amazing time. After which, everyone is called upon to give their answers, and the logical explanation follows. They've been entertained as well as informed. Ta-da! Infotainment. Good teachers know the value of play. Good workshop trainers will take the pressure off as quickly as they can. Excellent writers and speakers will use the power of stories, and they will get the audience smiling. Long before the main guts of the information comes along, they're reducing the pressure, reducing the pressure, reducing the pressure. The more pressure you put on a student, the more pressure you put on a client or the audience, the more the brain goes into shutdown mode. Which is why we have to release that tension. But more importantly, it's because you need to understand the real goal. What's the purpose? That's easy. You want the client to go forward. You want them to go forward on their own accord. But you can't beg them to continue. You can't intimidate them to continue. They must feel that pressure off and feel that fun coming through and say, well, let's go. Let's do this stuff. We're enjoying it. Understanding the goal is what makes the client or the student come back repeatedly. So this is the end of the first part, and let's go to the second part where we find out how we can get this goal thing going. Let's find out how we can understand the goal better. Better, faster, cheaper. That was NASA's mantra around the year 1999. And it was in this very year that the Mars Climate Orbiter was destroyed. On November 10th, 1999, the Mars Climate Orbiter was launched. It was a $125 million satellite, and it was supposed to become the first weather observer orbiting around another world. For this satellite to do its job, it needed to get into a stable orbit around Mars, around the red planet. The software that was controlling the orbiter's thrusters controlled it by using the system of measurement called pounds. However, there was a separate software, and that was processing the data in the metric unit, which is newtons. Now, these are two separate systems. They're used in different parts of the world. newtons, pounds, and the entire thing was just confusion. The entire mission was out of whack. In next to no time, it was clear that the mission was gone, was finished. It tore the fragile satellite apart. And just like that, the mission, the $125 million mission, was done. It was no more. When training clients, that burnout rate is consistently like the Mars orbiter. And this is because we're using completely different systems of measurements in our teaching methods. The goal isn't necessarily to get ideas or learning across. Yes, that's the final goal, but that's not the primary goal. The primary goal of any training system is to get the client back. Remember the story about Jen Jackson and how she tackled Michael's writing problem? Remember how my mother-in-law got her students to get all excited about Sunday school? When you think about education in an objective sense, you may feel that it is your job to get the information across. But knowledge is tiring, it's frustrating, it's sometimes depressing. And this is the wrong system of measurement that we're using as educators, as teachers. And this is why clients burn up. Before the mission gets underway, they drop out, they don't show up, they don't complete their assignments, they talk about being overwhelmed, they get distracted. Think instead of how you could get the client back using fun, using a factor of entertainment. Now, entertainment doesn't mean that you're just rolling out tacos and a mariachi band. But then again, who says learning has to be all work, work, and more work? Let's take an example like the Headlines course. So we have a Headlines course, which is online, and we start off this course with an assignment. And the assignment goes like this. Day 1, introduce yourself. Day 2, watch 3 videos, and these videos are from the movie Karate Kid. Day 3, list 5 topics and list as many subtopics as you can. So they go into day 1, they introduce themselves. Of course, they have a template, so it's fun because now there's no pressure to think, what am I going to say? Day 2, they have to watch 3 videos. And Karate Kid too. Do you think that's fun? Of course it's fun. Day 3, they have to list 5 topics. What are the topics? Like ice cream. And then they have to go with subtopics like cup, cones, scoops, buckets, sprinkles, Hershey's, chocolate syrup, brown cow, whipped cream. So by day 5, clients are clearly having fun. Mermaids, dinosaur, deep sea aliens. They all make the list. And everyone is having a blast. Everyone's forgotten that they're on a headline course. They're getting to know the members of their group. They're coming up with all these crazy topics, the subtopics. And it's similar to what happens at our place every Friday. On Fridays, for the past 4 years, we've taken our niece Marcia to the food market. The assignments could involve walking to the veggie section, weighing an object, writing down the weight of the object, or we might have to skip. No walking, just skipping to the dairy section. We have to find out how pricing works, how Swedish rounding of prices work. In short, Marcia and I have been running, jumping, and skipping through our learning exercise. She's learned about frozen foods, dried foods, fresh foods. She's learned about weights and measures, about addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Then when we get home, we do spellings. We do it in the garden. We walk around the car. I get sneaky steps on my Fitbit when I do that activity. However, let's make this really boring. Let's hunch over a desk. Let's sit at the dining table. And now you get the idea why most kids detest having to study. There is zero entertainment. There's lots of screaming. Do this, do that. So what would Marcia want to do the following week? Doesn't take much imagination, does it? If our goal is to educate, to train, to impart knowledge, then you and I are sure going about it the wrong way. Let's say you're conducting a workshop. Your audience doesn't have to sit there and worship you as you go over a slide and another slide and another slide. At Psychotactics, clients go for walks. They do their assignments while they're walking. They sit by the pool. We have games. We have soft toys like Jordan the otter. And of course, Elmo comes along. He sings his song wherever we go. And at one workshop, two of our clients, Jessica and Alia, who happen to be belly dancers, taught one part of the group to dance and the other to clap along to create the mood. Would you want to go to another dull, reverential, note-taking workshop, or would you want to come to a psychotactics workshop instead? If this sounds like too much fun and no work, that's not the case at all. Every course online, every workshop, every book you write needs to be result-oriented. If the client buys your product or service, they're looking for a result. They're looking for a result, and that definitely needs to be the finale. But why does it have to be boring? The only reason why any learning is boring is because the trainer doesn't realize that fun is possible. Or they take the easy route. They do what has already been done a million times before. If you want to create a fun-based situation, there is some work involved. It's not as if to suggest that a serious training session isn't a lot of work. It's just that you need to do so much more planning when fun is involved. Entertainment is great for the learner. It's great for the audience. But it's also a hard grind because you need to put all this entertainment in place. And then you need to put in all the information. However, the results of information plus entertainment are incredibly predictable. Clients come back repeatedly. If you were to attend a psychotactics workshop, you'd find that close to 50% of the audience come back for the second time, the third time, the fourth time. Clients travel long distances just to be at the workshop. And they sign up even before we have time to put up a sales page. For instance, if you take a look at the Singapore landing page workshop, 1/4 of the seats are already gone. With the Brussels workshop, all the seats are gone. A similar trend plays out when we're conducting courses online. Now that course is until July 2018, and where are we? We are in November of 2017. So those seats would go on sale by early March. And before you know it, and often within 24 hours, that course is completely filled to the brim. If you look at a presentation, you'll find that within my presentation, there are often videos, there are loads of cartoons, there's a touch of animation. I jump on stage, I do stuff that entertains the audience. It gives the audience respite. Even though the presentation may be about 40 minutes long, you want to have these elements of entertainment. If you read a book from psychotactics, you know that once again, there are cartoons. There's a recipe in the middle of the book. There's an epilogue at the end of the book. It tells you the process of how the book was made. So all of this constitutes entertainment. And this brings us full circle to the second part, which is what's the goal of education? The goal of education is to come back. That's what the goal of education should be, shouldn't it? Imagine you as a kid wanting to race to school every day because school is so much fun. Imagine learning Photoshop and having such a blast that you want to do Photoshop every day. Make no mistake, this is not just about pure entertainment. You're there for the information as well. But why does it have to be so boring? When you're teaching or you're learning, nothing stands the test of time better than entertainment. No one wants to go back to a place that's boring. We hate stuff like that. It drives us crazy. It tires us. We're exhausted. So how about creating something different? It doesn't matter if you have a yoga class or a watercolor class or some kind of webinar or seminar or you're speaking online. All of these options allow you to have fun and entertainment. And that should be your goal, to create that factor where people want to come back, because that is the real goal of education, to have the client come back repeatedly because they love being there. Now, obviously you're on the same page as me because you're still listening, so let's go to the third part. Now that we're pretty sure that fun is part of learning, let's move to finding out where we can put these fun parts and how we can make learning so much better for our clients and for ourselves, because it gives us downtime as well. Let's look at how to place fun elements in your training.
You're in a concrete room with a saw and a table. What do?
I don't know. What do I do?
The answer is, you saw the table in half, 2 halves make a hole, climb out the hole. You're in a concrete room with a table and a mirror. How do you get out?
I don't know. How do I get out?
You look into the mirror, you see what you saw, you grab the saw, you saw the table in half, 2 halves make a hole, you climb out the hole. This guy's got swagger.
I was speaking at Brennan Dunn's conference in Sweden earlier this year, and Rob Walling, who started up Drip, which is the automation software, the email automation software, he was making a presentation as well. And in the middle of the presentation, he does what is equivalent to an intermission. Well, it is an intermission because there on the slide it says intermission. And he shows pictures of his kids, like what they do when he's left the iPhone at home. And then he posts these jokes, which I have to admit I didn't understand. But the audience cracked up. It was a serious topic. It was how to launch a startup. Rob's a pretty easygoing speaker. He has well thought out slides and he has very gentle progression. Until midway, when the entire presentation suddenly stops and there's the intermission. It's a home video, there's nothing flashy, but the audience laughs as they watch the story unfold. How did the video end up in Rob's presentation? It's the same question that could be asked when you attend a psychotactics workshop. There in the middle of the workshop, you go scampering off for a scavenger hunt. Yes, right in the middle of the workshop, there is a peculiar assignment. The pre-assigned groups are given 30 minutes to go out and to find a whole bunch of items, to return, then to upload the pictures to the blog. And the next day, each group makes a presentation. The best entry is chosen by popular vote, and there's a tiny little presentation ceremony, a prize ceremony. You noticed the fun element in both the examples, didn't you? The question is, how did they get there? And the answer becomes pretty apparent even as the question is being asked. It doesn't get there by itself, someone has to put it there. In most cases, it's the creator of the presentation, the workshop, the course, who has decided to put it there, to put in those fun elements. And this is in complete contrast to what we used to do. When we started out, all our workshops were slide after slide after slide, 3 days of slides, not much fun, actually no fun at all. All our courses had that element of just boredom. The books, mercifully, like the Brain Audit, from the very start had cartoons and stuff like that, but largely it was boring stuff. And when you look at your course, when you look at your presentation, your webinar, what do you see? Do you see fun elements in there? Or do you just see slide after slide, page after page? What do you really see? Your product or service needs this break as well. And often enough, the break doesn't have to be connected to what you're teaching. Think of when you went to school. You went to school and you were in biology class or in mathematics or whatever, and then the bell rang and you ran out to the lunch break or the short break. What did the break have to do with what you were learning? It's just that someone decided to have a short and a long break. It enabled you to study and then to play and then to go back to your studies and then to play and then finally went back home. Your product or your service needs this break as well. And the way to go about this entertainment factor is to sit down with whatever you're creating. Let's say you're creating a book. Now, you're about to write the book. If you're going to make it fun, if you're going to make it more interesting, what would you do? You're about to conduct a course online. What do the assignments look like? Is there any space for play? What about your workshops or your seminars? other participants like prisoners, listening to you drone forward, drone on forever? Or is there some factor of entertainment? Is there some factor of play? Why can't a 30-minute presentation have an intermission like Rob Walling's presentation? Why couldn't it have? If you remember, going back to, say, reading the Reader's Digest, you have these examples of the lighter side of laughter, the best medicine. And this is in the middle of some pretty serious articles. Someone sat down and said, "Oh, all this stuff is so intense. We need to lighten up." Now, not everyone appreciates this entertainment, of course. The scavenger hunt goes down pretty well, but not with 100% of the clients. Cartoons in a marketing book sound a bit crazy, don't they? There are always going to be grumpy people. There are always going to be naysayers. However, by and large, those are the people who wanted to stay in and do their homework while we ran out for the school breaks. If they're unhappy with the entertainment factor, don't go around chaining everybody else in the room just because of a couple of grumps. Instead, design the event, the book, the product, or the service with this fun involvement. Look through other books, look through other situations, and find inspiration. If you look at a magazine like Esquire, you'll find that they have a joke section, and this joke is told by a supermodel. Could you be that supermodel in your book? If you've got a video course, why do you have to be Mr. Serious or Miss Serious or Mr. Let's get to the end of this thing? Why not have a bunch of videos that probably tell a joke or show something funny, maybe around your neighborhood? Or maybe take a leaf from Rob Walling's presentation. Maybe put in a video about your kids' crazy jokes. The fun part doesn't always have to be connected, it can be disconnected. You can have crossword puzzles, recipes, funny home videos, cartoons, stories, case studies. These are just some of the ways to entertain your audience when you're educating them. As this article demonstrates, entertainment isn't just a nice to have. Instead, it's a necessity. Often, it's the reason why people show up. Sometimes, it's the reason why they stay, why they continue. When you see an idea you like, make sure that you borrow it, that you use it well. We've used ideas from video, we've taken it and used it in our books. We've been to a Sting concert and used some of the concepts that he used at the concert, and we've used it in our podcast. You can get ideas from everywhere if you look out for them, and more importantly, implement them. My mother-in-law's Sunday school story didn't end well. She managed to get the kids interested, but jealousy worked against her. She was told to stop the fun. She was told to stop the fun bits, to only focus on the serious religious teaching. You, on the other hand, aren't going to be pulled up if you add entertainment to your work, are you? You have to plan in advance. The entertainment isn't just likely to pop in and sit there in the middle of your presentation, in the middle of your course. You have to work it into the syllabus. So sit down, create the entertainment. Start small and build from there. First, start with the entertaining bits. Doesn't have to be many bits. You can start with just one bit and then put all the work stuff around it. Or you could have a couple of bits and put the work stuff around. But start with the fun bits. And you'll notice that work is fun, but play is just as educational, if not more so. And this brings us to the end of this podcast. What did we cover in the 3 parts? The first thing is how to create infotainment. And we had that example of Photoshop, so you have to take the pressure off. That's the most critical bit of all. All learning is difficult. It might seem easy for you, it's very difficult for the person learning. So you have to take away that pressure. And Photoshop was the example. Even the workshops where we have the scavenger hunt, those are examples. So those are all examples of creating a pressure-free zone, creating a safe zone instead. And this took us to the second bit, which is what is the goal of all of this education? And the goal of education is simply to get the client to come back. Because if you get them to come back, then of course you're going to get paid again. But the more critical thing is that they're having fun, so they're coming back. And then they're learning that skill and they're coming back. And I don't see any downside in this, do you? And the third part is how to place fun elements in your training. And fun elements are there for the taking. For instance, we use Elmo when we're in our workshops, and Elmo does a dance, and then later on the second or third day, the entire group does a dance. Now, some people want to stand at the back and do the dance, but everyone has a great time. We have lunches, we have dinners, we have Elmo, we have Jordan the otter, we have so many of these fun elements, and we've put them in over the years, not all at once. And we've taken our boring workshops, our boring courses, our boring books, and we've made them more interesting. And that's why the clients come back. They get the information, but they also get the entertainment. People often look at infotainment and go, I don't want to do infotainment. That's kind of yucky. That word isn't so great. But it's about fun. And once you understand the concept of fun, you're going to put fun before everything else. So what's the one thing that you can do today? Maybe you have a book, maybe you have a course, maybe you have something coming along in the next month, 2 months, 3 months. Can you sit down and put in one element of fun? What about 2? That's the simplest thing you can do. You don't have to do anything right now, you just have to plan for it and then work all your notes, your slides, whatever you have around that fun element and watch how your audience reacts to that. You'll love doing it and they will love you for it. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. So what's happening in psychotactics land? If you've been listening to the podcast, you've heard a few announcements about the course that we were having, the landing page course in Brussels and in Singapore. If you were planning to come to Brussels, well, that event is completely booked. Before we had time to even savor our sales page, it was completely booked. Almost 3/4 of it got booked before the sales page went up, and then 1/4 shortly after. So that event is completely booked in Brussels, but in Singapore, there are still few seats available, so get in touch with us. Email me at sean@psychotactics.com or renuka@psychotactics.com. You'll find it on the website. You don't have to remember anything in this podcast. Just make a note and we'll send you the details. But just so you know, it's on the 11th to the 13th of April. It was 12th to 14th. Well, now it's 11th to 13th April. And if you're keen to learn more about landing pages, we've covered quite a bit on the podcast itself. So episode number 85 has 85A and 85B. And just go into psychotactics.com/85 and you should be able to get that. There's also landing pages on 132. So that's psychotactics.com/132. This will teach you a bit about landing pages, and then there's more in Client Attractors. Now, Client Attractors is a book, and you can get it on the Psychotactics website. It teaches you how to write bullets. And most people, what they do when they're doing a landing page is they start off with a headline. And to me, that's the wrong place, because the headline is like the flag fluttering on top of the building. It gets your attention. There's no doubt about that. But what's the base? What's the base structure? That base structure are the bullets. When you can write great bullets, you can then move that to the headline. You can move them to testimonials. And that's really what the Landing Pages workshop is all about. So if you want to learn more about bullets, Client Attractors is the place to start, and get yourself a copy of the book. Start with learning the bullets, how to write features and benefits, and why you need to put in problems and solutions. You can't just write a whole bunch of bullets and expect the client to go, wow, that's wonderful. What you need to do is construct them in a way that gets attention. Because when you think about it, a bullet is like a headline. And when you're writing 20, 30 of those bullets, that's like 30 headlines on your sales page, on your landing page. That is precisely what gets clients to pay attention to what it is you're selling, whether it be a service or a product or training, just about anything. Put your energy in the right place. Get the bullets and get client attractors. Finally, 5000 BC. If you've been putting it off for the longest time because you think, I'm not sure whether I want to join 5000 BC, well, that's the place where you not only get information, like pretty much any other website. If you join any website, any membership site, there is going to be a lot of information. But how valuable is that information to you at this moment? Supposing you have an obtuse question that's not related to that information. You can go into any website and start to ask questions, and of course, there are no answers because there's just information. That's the difference between 5000 BC and most other websites. I'm there almost all the time, except when I'm on vacation. So if you want to take advantage of that situation where you can ask me questions and get almost an article in response, maybe 2 or 3 articles in response, then 5000 BC is a place for you. It's a place where introverts meet. There's no grandstanding, there's no promotions, there's none of that stuff that you see online. It's about being kind, being helpful, and being gone. And on that note, I'm going to be gone from here because this one has gone to almost 40 minutes. That's me, Sean D'Souza, saying bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? If you're wondering what's the entertainment factor in this podcast, well, that's what I did when I sat down to create this podcast. I decided that it was going to be different from any other podcast out there in the sense that some of the podcasts told stories and they just told stories, and the other ones were about work and information and marketing and stuff like that. And I decided to merge the two. And that's how we made the 3-month vacation podcast. So there are many stories, many personal stories, many stories that you've never heard of, like missions to space or about volcanoes or how cork grows or a whole bunch of stuff that keeps you entertained. And it's not just about information, which can be quite tiring. And then in the end, there is this still listening bit, which is also a form of entertainment. I guess I don't do it all the time, but it's there enough that you might look forward to it. So there is always scope for it. And if the question was in your mind, what about the podcast? Well, here's the answer. And now I'm going to say bye. Bye-bye.